So what we mean by all these complex terms basically is that as first speaker, you need to define what the motion is. You need to have a brief idea of what you're debating about, or maybe tell the adjudicator, the panel, whatever your side believes, right? So what do you mean by stakeholders, right? These are all of the people that are affected by the motion. How, and you can talk about, okay, for example, if they're talking about a motion related to homework, then the stakeholders are the students and the teachers, right? So those are your stakeholders. Now, when we talk about a burden, the burden is what we're trying to prove in our debate, right? So, as a debater, your primary goal is that you have to prove your side of your motion by basically defining the motion and then going about through all the three speakers from your team, and they keep on building upon the burden, right? So, as first speaker, your role is very simple. Ignoring all these difficult terms that are there, you basically have to come and explain the motion, what your side thinks, and just give an opening to the debate. Like, you need to just talk about, okay, this is what we believe, and this is why we believe what we believe, and then maybe give a brief idea on whatever your other speakers are going to talk about. So maybe if you just define what the motion is, then you talk about, okay, this is what I'm saying, but what is the outcome of what I'm saying, right? And then you can talk about your model, which is like, we live in a world where this is that, but in our world, what we suggest is this. So basically, all of what a first speaker is supposed to do is that you need to talk about, okay, this is my motion firstly, and this is the definition of it. What we understand from this motion is that this is happening, and what our world looks like. Like, what, okay, if something is implemented, what we are saying, what will the world look like, right? So basically, as a first speaker, if you want to have a basic roadmap in your mind, you will first talk about, okay, this is the definition of my motion. If we are saying that we want this to happen, it will lead to this. Okay, you do not need to over explain because you are the first speaker again, but you can just touch upon like basic things, but not go delve deeper into it because you're the first speaker, right? So you want to set up the problem in the status quo, and because the motion, you're talking about a particular motion, and you need to basically just set the debate for your other speakers to come and take over and handle, right? So you have to be you have to pick up different points, but you have to be as concise as you can be, because then that's the role of a second speaker, right? So I think the first speaker is done with that. Avana, would you want to add to that?
Yes, okay. So just an example of a motion for you guys to just have it a bit more clear. So just for example, the motion is this house would ban alcohol. What does this mean? This means that the government will make the production, the sale, and basically the public consumption of alcohol illegal, right? This means that we're standing for a world where people are healthier, people are safer, they make fewer harmful decisions which are caused by alcohol. Now you tell us what the world looks like. You say that we currently live in a world where alcohol causes drunk driving, it causes health issues, it causes addiction, violence. Millions of families suffer because of alcohol related harm. So you basically explain the harms that alcohol poses in today's world. Then what is your model? How are you banning alcohol? You're saying that our policy is that we're stopping all commercial production of alcohol. You're saying that we're going to have strict fines against people who do consume it without permission. And then who are the people who are affected by this? You're just going to say drinkers, the families of the people who drink, victims of drunk driving, teenagers, the healthcare system. You explain how these people are affected. Then you come with a consensus. You say, so we all agree on the fact that alcohol can cause harm. No one is disagreeing on the fact that alcohol, like whether alcohol causes harm or not. Everyone knows that it causes harm. So that's not something you argue on. The actual question is, should we ban it or not? We say yes because the harms are too big. Then you're going to have two or three arguments showing why why banning alcohol leads to a better world. You say it gets one, better crime, better health, two, less crime, three, stronger families. These are just very easy arguments that you could take if you had this motion. It's just an example, guys. Okay, move on. Shri, or you think you're taking this?
All right, sure. So here you just have a bunch of examples of things that you should not do. A large part of these are like extremely technical, so we're just going to go ahead and summarize this. One, you shouldn't squirrel. By squirreling, we just mean going against the spirit of the motion. So if the motion says this house would ban alcohol, as the previous example, presumably you cannot talk about medical alcohol within that example. And the reason for this is just that it is against the spirit of the motion. We all know what sort of alcohol the motion was talking about. So you shouldn't go ahead and try to go ahead and prove like extremely uncharitable things. And what I mean by uncharitable is just things that make this motion non-debatable. The second thing is obviously violation of like obvious meaning just means that if we have specifically given you perhaps an info site or perhaps like a very specific word, you shouldn't go ahead and interpret it however you want. For example, like unless and until the motion is extremely vague, you cannot go ahead and say that a world government would just be like a judicial system instead of a proper government. So I think there's just a bunch of examples there. I'm not going to go into the examples necessarily. Circular reasoning is something that lots of like novice debaters do, where they just say something is good because something is good. For example, banning alcohol is bad. Like banning alcohol is good because alcohol is bad. That doesn't necessarily explain anything that you actively are trying to prove within that round. Other things are like pretty intuitive in and of itself. Sorry. Any questions in chat, and then I will answer after I'm done with the slide. Like manipulation of absolute words just means if the motion says this house would ban um like all politicians from doing something. So, for example, this house would ban all politicians from talking about important current affairs, something similar to that. Then you cannot go ahead and say that like Gov has to prove every single politician would necessarily comply with this, and just because like you. It's enough if you prove the vast majority of people do this. Other things are like unnecessary, unexpected redefinition is pretty much the same thing. Overly general definition just means that you're not actually doing proper frame, um, which basically means if like oftentimes when you're giving definitions, you're trying to prove what exactly something is. Also, guys, for all of this like technical questions, we will answer them. Do not worry. In terms of how many rounds, what's the motion, all of those things. So you don't need to ask right now. Right now, we're going to focus on more format things. In terms of overly general definition, it is literally just like you not bringing in context. So, for example, if the motion says this house would ban alcohol specifically in China, you have to go ahead and talk about why like the Chinese government necessarily benefits from this rather than just like the broad based benefits of banning alcohol, right? So always make sure that you're more like if the motion is specific, your arguments are also specific. But that's largely everything that you need to know. You can take a like screenshot of this slide because you can always just use this as a checklist to check whether your definitions or any of your arguments are violating any of these basic principles. But largely, the vast majority of you guys don't make these pitfalls. This is just like so you have like a reinforcement mechanism here.
Okay, so we'll be beginning with second speaker. The second speaker comes at a point in a debate after, let's say, your second speaker of proposition. First speaker of proposition, your teammate, has already introduced your case. The first speaker from the other side has introduced their case and has probably rebutted some points that you've said. So what you need to do here is thing number one, you need to rebut this. We'll go into rebuttals later on, but rebuttal basically means to prove the other team's case false. So you first need to prove why the speaker who was before you from the opposition team, why their case is false. Then what you need to do, which is very important, and most speakers forget this, is to rebuild your own case. Remember that in the debate, because it's comparative, it's really important to prove that the other side is wrong, but also important to prove that you're right. So for every rebuttal that the other side has, you need to defend your case. You can't just let the rebuttal be. After that, you bring in two new arguments. Since your first speaker just introduced content, the burden falls on you to bring in more explanation, more examples, more analysis. Moving on then to explaining these 3 points properly. Firstly, on rebuttals, this is how the structure of a rebuttal should be. First, you start by saying side proposition talks about this particular thing. The more specifically you can point out what the other side said and what you're rebutting, the stronger it seems because it's easier for judges to take notes then. There are three possible rebuttals that you could do.
For the best response, it's better that you use all three. If you're not able to do all three, that's totally fine. Do as many as you can out of them. The three types of rebuttals would be: first, you don't think that's true. Try to break the other side's logic false. If they say that banning alcohol is necessarily going to lead to better healthcare for these people, try to find a reason as to why that logic is false. And because in most cases, every argument will have a fault in it. So try to find that basic fault. Second would be say that we don't think they showed us a good analysis. And here you can give, okay, once again, just to reiterate, any basic questions that you all have regarding the tournament structure, we'll be answering that at the end. This is more about the format itself. Coming back to this, the second way is to say that their analysis was really weak. So, first, you say that their analysis didn't prove anything. Second, you try to show how their analysis was really weak, and you can show multiple reasons for this. Third, this is a very like tricky thing to use, but it could be really interesting to use in a debate. You say that even if their argument is completely right, it's not important in a debate. So the way to proving this could be, let's say in a motion of this house would ban alcohol, they say that the environment will be better. You can probably come back and say that the environment is not really the main stakeholder in this debate, it is the people. So even if they're completely right, we don't really think it matters in this debate. Okay, so you basically weigh it against your own arguments and say why your argument is much more better or important than theirs. That's the three types of rebuttals you can do. We'll be explaining this later as well, I believe, in detail. Second, then, are arguments. For the arguments, we've gone through this before, just re explaining. You first have your claim, that is the title of what you'll be proving. Second is the evidence, that's how do you know that's true. You could have examples, you could have logic here. Third would be your impact and outcome. Fourth, like impact would be the result of your logic. What happens? Your impact would be what eventually happens because of the logic that you've given. You then move into why is that important. Remember, it's really, really essential to prove that if something happens, it really matters in the debate. Because if you don't do that, it's very easy for the other side to use this rebuttal against you. So make sure you do this part. And then if you have enough time, a really, really great strategy is to compare the worlds. So say that in our world, this argument looks like this. In their world, the problems look like this. Just to give more analysis and make it clearer for the judge. And then this is an important line. If you could say it, please do. Just say moving to my second argument. So your structure is much more better. And then you move on to the same, like the same structure of an argument, but your second argument. Is there anything else to add, Aahvana or Shree?
No.
Okay.
Okay, now for the third speaker. So now the third speaker's job is not to make new arguments, first of all. The arguments have already come out in the first and second speaker, and there's already been sufficient time to respond to these arguments. So the basic job of the third speaker is to, one, respond to what the other team said, everything what the other team said if it hasn't been addressed. Two, to organize whatever the fight going on in the debate is into clear clashes. Basically, what does this debate come down to? One side has brought up this argument about health, the other side has brought up this argument about health. Which argument about health is more important? Then three is to basically compare both sides and explain while your side wins. Basically, the third speaker is just the person who goes, let me sort this mess out for the judges. So here's what you can't do in a third speech. You cannot introduce a whole new argument that your team never mentioned. For example, if your team never talked about climate change, you can't suddenly say, and also this harms the environment. That's not allowed because it's something that the other team just doesn't have any time to respond to. So what you can add is new rebuttals. You can add new explanations to already existing points. You can give new examples for arguments. You can give better weighing. I will explain what weighing is. You can give better comparison, and you can basically give stronger conclusions. Um, so let me just tell you what weighing is. So weighing is basically just comparing both the worlds and explaining which world wins on this front. I'll be going more into that. But basically, what so an easy way to start your third speech is by going like, so panel, what is it that our side had to fulfill today? So you basically reiterate the burden that your first speaker said, and you will explain why you have fulfilled this burden. Because if you remember, your first speaker had said, if we fulfill this burden, we win this debate. So you explain, how have we fulfilled this burden? So with that, you will be able to win if you explain that correctly. So then you basically break the debate down. You say, here's what has broadly happened in the debate so far. So then you'll explain three themes or arguments that have come out. So one, two, and three. And basically, and those three themes or arguments, you can now rebut those. And if they've been rebutted already by the second speaker, unless you have a completely new rebuttal to it, please don't repeat it. And then you go on to your rebuttals. So rebuttals are basically just you going against a specific argument or a specific, explanation that the other side gives you. You can rebut in like three ways. You can say if another side gives an argument, you can say, side opposition said this, three things to this. One, we don't think that this is true because this is just not true because of these reasons. Two, you haven't really shown us how this happens. You haven't really analyzed this part for us well. So how do we believe this? Whatever. And then three, even if we believe it, it's not so important. Or even if we believe it, it doesn't happen to the same extent that you tell us that it happens, and explain why. So if you follow these 3 points, this is not something that you have to follow, but if you follow these 3 points, then your like the argument that the other side has brought up has completely been rebutted. Because the even if part is very important. Remember to always run on your worst case and the other side's best case, because if you keep running on your best case scenario, then it's just not fair for the other side. So just remember to always take your worst case and say, okay, even if we give this to you, even if we say that this harm happens on our side, why are we still winning this debate? Then moving on to clashes. So what exactly is a clash? So, clash is basically you telling the panel that let's look at the big questions in this debate. Then you organize this debate into like three clashes, maybe. Three clashes, I think that should be okay. And even two clashes should be okay in 4 minutes. So, two clashes saying, one, is this necessary? Two, who creates more harms or benefits? Or your clash could sound something like, which world is better in terms of this. So it's basically an impact that both sides clash on, an impact that both sides want to deliver. Which side delivers this impact well? Okay, I think we can move on. Okay. So you guys can just read this. I think this is just repetition of what I've already said. You guys can just take a screenshot of this. Varnika, Devika, Shree, if you have anything to add on about this, you can.
Do you want me to move ahead?
Yes. Okay, so now, guys, on engagement, something that we often notice with debaters, like, um, is that they don't engage. So this is like one of the biggest flaws in debates that we see. So engagement is extremely important. It shows that you can take on the other side's arguments and you can put them down. So here are just ways that you can engage. Engagements can be in the form of two things, either rebuttals or call outs. So rebuttals, we've explained what rebuttals are. They're basically when you're replying to the other side's case, to their arguments, and you're refuting it. We told you how you can rebuttal. If you have questions on that, we'll address them. But then there's also something called call outs. If the other side is not explaining something well, if they're making random assumptions, if they're just giving you claims, no evidence, no, like they're not analyzing at all, you can fully call that out. If the other side has a definition which is not charitable, the thing that Shree explained earlier about uncharitable definitions, for example, if they come up with an uncharitable definition and they're running their whole case on that, please feel free to call that out, because the judge, whoever's judging your debate, cannot like just think that, oh, this team has an uncharitable case, so I can mark them wrong on that. Unless you point it out, the judge cannot call it out that, oh, this team is just going on its assumptions, unless you point it out. Even with rebuttals, the judge is not going to be like, oh, this argument doesn't make sense, so let me mark them low, unless you point it out. So these are just ways that you can rebuttal, or yeah, these are just ways you can rebuttal. You can say what you're saying is not likely, this is why. What you're saying is factually incorrect, this is why. What you're saying is important but not important as what we are saying, and then give a reasoning for that. So basically, this is just a list of ways that you can rebut another side's arguments. You can move on.
Yeah, I think also just to add to this, like the idea of call outs, guys, it's really important for you all to remember that there could be like a very, very big contradiction in the other side's case. Like the second speaker could have completely disagreed with the first, and the judges can do absolutely nothing till you say it. So you can't expect the judge to note it down themselves and like give you extra marks for that. The only way your team gets a benefit from that is if you say it.
Okay, and then this is just some more clarification of responses. On responses, you guys can just read this. If you have any questions, just let us know.
Also, guys, so a lot of you are asking whether you can run two arguments in second or something like that. This slide directly responds to that. One, if you're going to run two arguments in second, it becomes harder for your third speaker to actually respond to a lot of the claims that are coming from them. The reason as to why this is true is because they would often have to extend at least some part of what you've spoken so far. And if your argument is not a direct preemptive, in a lot of cases, it is not a direct preemptive because you have 4 minutes, you cannot put in preemptive responses. That oftentimes means that your case is at a strategic loss because the vast majority of what your third speaker says is now considered backloading. Backloading is just when the like lots of new material comes out in third and they cannot be credited to the same extent. But second, even if you go ahead and assume that that is not the case, you only have one speech to develop your responses now, which is oftentimes really bad because if they have three arguments and you can only respond to two sufficiently because we've given you so many steps to actually be able to take down an argument, there are two outcomes. The first is that the third argument remains standing, presuming you do a good job of taking down the first and second argument, or two, you want to do everything, which means you're sacrificing the quality of responses, which again the judges don't actively credit or buy to the same extent. I think all of that is just like very, very bad for your team. So if you are doing two arguments in second, you will have to figure out how to strategically prioritize. And we cannot give you that answer because it is up to you and your team and your priorities on whether, okay, is this argument important enough that we have to push this to the larger degree to be able to decide this. We cannot decide this for you. What we can say is that there is no fixed structure that the judges will necessarily credit. So for example, if you're doing two arguments in second, they will still credit it. But if you fail to meet your essential burdens within the speech, which is just like second speeches have to engage to some degree, then obviously your speech is not being marked well enough. So you will have to figure that out. You cannot ask us for like clarifications on that because this is the biggest clarification that we can give you. That is, it is up to you.
Okay, now on to why you win the debate. Just give me a second. Okay. All right. So especially in third speaker, we think that weighing should even be done in the second speaker and a bit in the first speaker whenever needed. But weighing is basically mainly something that a third speaker does, and showing why you win the debate is also something that a reply speaker should always do, even weighing. So here's just how you can do weighing. So you can weigh on scale the number of people impacted. So if something that is coming up a lot in your debate is the amount, like the number of people that each side is impacting, then scale is something you can weigh arguments on. Opposition can say that, through this policy, these many people are getting impacted. Proposition can say, on our side, these many people are getting impacted. So your third speaker or your reply speaker can come in with a clash and say which side impacts more people. That can be a clash, all right? And in that clash, you basically layer it and explain why our side impacts more people, hence why we win on this front. Then it could be on the magnitude of impact, it's the same thing, like explain it in the same way. Then on vulnerability, which side addresses vulnerable communities more, which side addresses marginalized communities more, and then weighing by argument quality. So you can also weigh on like mechanism. So how likely did they prove their arguments to be true? And then nuance, proportionality, these are just very complicated terms. I don't think that you guys need to go into it right now. If any of you want to explain it to them better, you can.
Yeah, so what we basically mean by nuance is that in a lot of cases, you guys assume that one outcome happens because of one variable. For example, and this is generally a bad example, but I can't think of better ones. If you're going to say that there's going to be a massive reduction in crime, and you say that this is primarily because of alcohol, I think it is quite easy for the other team to just respond. Perhaps it's not a good response, but they would still go ahead and respond by saying the people who consume alcohol to the greatest degree, who are often the ones caught in things like these traffic accidents, so to say, are probably going to shift to other worse forms of things. So, for example, narcotics or something similar to that, that again leads to the same outcome. Or the second way that they can respond to this is if you're trying to prove a really big impact, they can lessen the impact of your case by just saying this happens because of a multitude of other reasons which aren't debated within the motion. So, for example, perhaps crime happens because people are like for example, crimes of necessity. Generally, what we just say is that crime reduces, but it's very easy for the other team to just go out and respond to go out and say that there are other variables involved in crime. For example, like your economic condition, which is why you see the favelas and things like that, like primarily prevailing as like major crime sites. So essentially, what this is just saying is that make sure that that one way you prove as to why that one variable which you are changing in the motion, that is essentially the problem that you have like identified in your first speech, is necessarily because of the thing that is in the motion and not because of any other variable. And that's how you generally add some amount of nuance to the case. Just make sure that it is an exclusive case, essentially.
Okay, and just to explain what we mean by exclusivity, guys, proving exclusivity is extremely important. Let me just explain you what that means. So exclusivity basically is harms that only happen in the world of the other side or gains that only happen in your world. Basically, arguments that only take place in either side, because if both worlds have the same harms or the same benefits, then what exactly are you arguing on? Because the judge cannot tell who wins. So super simple, if both sides give the same result, there's no exclusivity, which means what you win on. So if only your side creates the benefit, then it's an exclusive gain, you win. So let me just explain this through an example. For example, again, the motion, this house would ban alcohol. So would only in opposition's world do drunk people drive and crash. Only in opposition's world do families get harmed by alcoholic parents. Only in opposition's world do hospitals get flooded with alcohol related diseases. And only in opposition's world does this addiction continue. This is just something you can say. Obviously the other side can go against it and be like, even if you ban it, this is why it's still not happening on your side. But then what are exclusive gains? So why the benefits only happen on our side if we ban alcohol? You could say only in our world do people avoid long term liver disease. Only in our world do teenagers grow up in safer homes. And only in our world do crime rates drastically reduce. So, this is just extremely important because it's just answering a simple question, which is why does my side create something that the other side can't? So, always show why your harms are or gains are exclusive to your world or to their world. All right. Yeah.
Okay, POIs are one of the most interesting parts of a debate because the first speakers on both sides usually don't get like as much of a chance to rebut, and that's mostly done by the second and the third speakers. But the POI is a way that even the first speaker of a team can directly engage or talk to the third speaker. which just makes it like a better form of engagement. And it is really advised that you at least offer and accept one POI during the debate, because they will reflect on your score. So, firstly, just to explain how to accept points of information. Let's say I'm the one giving the speech, and Shree asks me a POI. I can, at the start of my speech, I will state a preference. If I want the POI via chat, that's someone messaging on chat saying POI, or I want the person to interrupt my speech and say POI, or if I'd like the person to raise their hand. Whatever is comfortable to you, please make sure you state your preference before your speech begins. And everyone who is asking a POI, please take note of the speaker's preference. You don't want to just throw the speaker off the topic completely. That's the first thing. Second thing, if a POI is asked to you, it is absolutely your right if you want to accept it or say no to it. It's possible that you're in between an argument right now and you don't want to disrupt it, and you end up saying, I will take the POI later. And then you say, are there any POIs on the floor now that have completed my argument? If that's the case, it's totally fine. But please try to make sure that you at least take one POI in a debate. More than one is your choice. Make sure you take one at least. Second, this is a really important thing, and it goes for the one asking the POI as well as the one answering it. If you have taken a POI, remember that a POI question is supposed to be 15 seconds. So if the if the person who's asking the question is taking 15 seconds, do not interrupt them in between that. But if their question is really long, going over 20 seconds, and you don't understand what it is, you can interrupt them and say, okay, this POI is too long. You can either ask them to shorten it, or you can say, I won't be taking the POI now. But remember, if it's under 15 seconds and you don't answer it, it will reflect on your score. So make sure if you're interrupting the person who's asking the question, it needs to be a POI which is cross like 15, 16 seconds. Now remember that when you're offering points of information, only one speaker from the opposing team can offer a POI. You can't have all the three members on chat going POI, 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 or all of y'all saying POI in between a person's speech. Y'all can realize how irritating it is. You're trying to make a point and there are like three people continuously saying POI. You're going to be thrown off. You don't know what to say anymore. So remember, decide amongst your chat and decide which speaker is going to be offering the POI, and only one of you can offer the POI. Remember that offering a POI just means saying POI. It does not mean saying the topic of your POI or saying your question. And you can only say your question after the speaker says, yes, I accept your POI. Yes, what's your POI? Only then can you ask the question. Till then, it is just POI. Also, an important thing, if a POI is rejected or even accepted, like if you've already answered the question or you said no to the POI, please make sure that you wait at least 20 seconds before asking the person another POI. If you keep asking them POIs, let's say then like every 1 second, that will be considered badgering, and the team who is asking POIs so repeatedly, their points will be deducted. POIs are not a way that you distract or ruin the other person's speech. It's just a way that you interact and engage directly with what the speaker has said. Once again, it's really important that you say what your preference is before your speech begins. You can't expect another person who's asking the POI to automatically know what is better for you. Please state your preference clearly at the start. You can state it before you begin your speech as well. If someone does not if you've said do it via chat only, if someone interrupts you during your speech, you're free to again re-say that please send it in chat only. Um, okay, I hope POIs are clear. Is there anything else that you all want to add?
Okay, I see one question in the chat about POIs. It says, if there are no POIs in a speech, what will we do? So, guys, um, honestly, like in your speech, it's preferred to keep like a time for POIs, right? Like you'll be like, okay, in the start of your speech, you can be like, there's going to be a time where I'm taking POIs, so please don't badger me. And then in the middle of your speech, you can be like, okay, now I'll be taking any POIs. 3, 2, 1. And if the other side doesn't give you any POIs, then please feel free to say something like, okay, I see no POIs. I think you guys all agree with me. I'll be moving on. Something like that. It's very easy. It just makes it easier for you if the other side doesn't have any POIs. Just looks bad on them. So guys, please make sure you ask POIs and you take POIs.
Okay. If there's nothing else, and yeah, Hannah's right. With that, we'll move on to the judging criteria. Okay, so we will be judging you all on three factors. The first one, of course, the most important one, is your content. Your content is basically what you're saying in the speech. So everything that we've taught you till now, your arguments, your clashes, your engagement, all of that comes under content. So please make sure that you have really, really good content. apart from content, the thing which is given the same amount of points, like 40% is your style. Your style is the way you speak, the speed you're speaking with, how is your voice toned, like is it a really really boring speech to listen to, or is it really interesting? Do you have good examples? Are you saying it in an interesting way? Because realize your judge is going to be sitting there for probably like 3 hours listening to debates non-stop. You want the judge to have a reason to listen to your speech and be interested in your speech. So the matter what you're saying and how you're saying it becomes really, really important. Strategy then is often a tricky part, but it does count for 20% of your final score. What comes under strategy is how well has your team basically distributed arguments? Have you, like, if you're first speaker and you've taken the weakest argument of the debate, it probably doesn't show as well on your strategy. So just make sure that your like arguments between the first and the second speaker should always be split or ordered in like and how based on the basis of how important they are in the debate. If there's a rebuttal and you don't respond to it, basically just make sure you are actively involved in the debate, and all decisions that you're making regarding your rebuttals, arguments, clashes are very strategic and benefit your side. So yeah, that's content, how you're saying, like what you're saying, style, how you're saying it, and strategy, why are you saying it. Is there anything else to this?
I think for strategy is also about how you like divide your speech, right? For example, in a first speech, if you spend like 3 minutes of your time just setting up the debate and saying that like, this is like and just saying definitions, burdens, moral, and you just spend your whole debate doing that, and then you have like 1 minute left for a POI and arguments, then I think that's a horrible strategy to take because obviously you can't explain your whole argument in just that minute. Then also, if you're a third speaker and for example you're spending and you're not doing any weighing any rebuttals in your speech and you're just spending the whole thing rebuilding, then I think that's also a very bad strategy. So it's also about how you divide your speech and how you fulfill your speaker role.
Aahvana, should we now move on to the motion release?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is something that you guys have been asking a lot in chat and also waiting. So here comes the motion release. Please take a screenshot of this, and I believe we'll also be sharing this PPT. But just take a screenshot
Okay,
for your convenience.
let's just clarify one thing for them. So guys, there's going to be two rounds, right? There's going to be a first round on the 6th and first round for the 7th. This is for both categories. Juniors and middle are going to have their round 1 on 6th and round 2 on 7th. We'll share the schedule with you, but basically there's going to be only one motion for juniors and only one motion for middle, which means you will be given the motion. Now you have to prepare for and you have to prepare against. Okay, you have to prepare both sides. We're not giving you two motions, just one motion, for and against. And you will be given any side, you don't know the side. Any side on 6th, we'll be telling you the side like maybe 15 minutes before the debate starts. And you will have to deliver that speech on that side. Now, whatever side you deliver the speech on the first day 6th, you will be delivering a speech on the neck on like the other side on the 7th. If you have more questions on that, we'll address that later, but okay, yeah, motion release.
Okay, so the motion for juniors is this house supports the rise of streaming services at the expense of traditional television.
Feel free to ask any questions right now, guys. If it's
Like
questions
streaming
about
services, YouTube and all of that. At the expense of traditional. TV का देखते हैं वो. I'll tell you.
guys here, you can raise your hand and we will take questions. Otherwise, you can also alternatively put them in chat. We will answer all logistical questions in a bit. Yes, go on, Kyra.
By traditional television, do you mean like old time TVs that had different channels, or like I don't really
Essentially,
get?
yes, a lot of things that you see on like TV and stuff like that. So, for example, channels such as I can go onto my TV and then switch channels and things like that, compared to something like Netflix and Prime and other sorts of streaming services and OTT platforms, essentially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Aryan, go on.
Um, in this, what do you mean that this will support the rise of streaming services instead of
So,
traditional television?
so like I said, streaming services are largely you being able to, sorry, largely you being able to go ahead and use things like Netflix, Prime, and stuff like that. So OTT platforms essentially. You can watch whatever series you want and things like that. Yeah. They're for streaming movies or this debate does not apply to things like YouTube or streamers or something like that. Just in case you guys like misunderstand, because primarily this replaces traditional television. So the obvious alternative to traditional television is OTT platforms. Yep, Juhi. Sorry if I mispronounced anyone's name.
So you said that during our debate, if for example on sixth we get prop, then on seventh we'll get op, right? So what will we get in the finals? Is that an impromptu round or is that like a different motion? Or
All details about outcomes we'll tell you in a bit, but the motion for finals will ideally be different. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah. Okay. So the finals and the semifinals are both going to be prepared rounds. For the teams that make it, we will be giving you the motion like 2 days in advance, and you will be preparing for that. It's a completely different motion, and it's going to be prepared.
How
Yep.
will you?
Uh, Raise your hand for questions, please. Arihan, go on.
So firstly, when you talk about the expense of not watching streaming services and instead of watching traditional television, that means that today instead of people watching things like your channels, say a cricket match on news, you're now watching a movie on Prime Video. Correct me if I'm not wrong. If I'm wrong.
Sure, you can interpret it that way, but I also think the primary thing is just that you all like sit together. Sure, there is some amount of decline of like things like what do you call it, cricket and things like that. But I would primarily say that that is not where this primary debate lies. And the reason for this is that streaming services are now also increasingly broadcasting sports. Like for example, I think it was Geo Hotstar, but they used to have licensing rights towards IPL. You can correct me if I am wrong. So this debate primarily happens on all spectrums of this and not necessarily just the sports spectrum or the movie spectrum. What the expense of necessarily means in this motion is that there is an inherent trade-off. So obviously, when people are watching streaming services, the time that they would otherwise devote to traditional television goes down. So that is the trade-off that you take, and that's what the word "the expense of" is trying to say. Um, Arya, go on.
I still
Okay,
didn't understand the motion.
what do you not understand? If you come back to me with a specific question, I'll try my best to clarify it for you.
I just don't understand what it means.
Uh, so this house supports the rise of essentially just means that you like I think the motion wording is pretty explicit. You are saying that this rise was necessarily good. Streaming services just essentially means like Netflix, Prime Video, Hotstar, all of the different platforms that you have right now. Crunchyroll for anime, things like that. Traditional television is just the sort of things that you would normally watch on cable TV. That is essentially just if I turned on my TV right now and then I'm just giving you guys an illustration of what cable TV is. If I'm going to type like 361, that would be a specific channel code. And that channel would only run one movie. So I would have like 5 or 6 different channels with 5 or 6 different movies going on at the same time. But largely it's a fixed movie. Like I cannot watch whatever I want. Streaming services, I can watch whatever I want. Anything beyond this would just be giving you an argument. So I hope you understand. If you have specific questions, raise your hand again. Yes, Aryan. Okay.
How are we gonna get judged? Because my mom
Uh,
was saying about that we are gonna get points.
Apologies. I'm not sure what you mean. If you mean yes, you will still get speaker scores, which I presume is what you mean by points. But obviously, a part of this is also based on your content. So you will be getting direct feedback on your content by your judges, and you can ask them for clarifications. But speaker scores will not be released, as per my knowledge.
Okay,
No,
so
his question is, what you mentioned is that on one day it will be for, next day it will be against, okay? And basis the performance in both the rounds, the winners would be announced. Is my
okay,
understanding correct?
okay. So
So
basically,
what
what
he's
we mean
trying
by
to, yeah.
Yeah, so what we mean by that is it's not going to be judged on speaker points. Basically, teams that win both the rounds are going to be qualifying. And if we have many teams that have won both rounds, then it depends on the teams with the most wins and the most speaker points that qualify. And then if we have like less than 8 teams which have won both rounds, then those are already going to be qualifying. And then the rest will be just dependent on teams with one win only, which have the highest speaker scores. So those will be going. But we will not be revealing your speaker scores to you. We will just be giving you feedback after your speeches. Does that clear up
But
your
Um,
will
doubt?
there,
can I
but
have a clarifying question on this?
Go ahead.
So what my understanding is, suppose there are 10 teams, and because it's the first time for my son, hence the clarifying question. So suppose there are 10 teams, two teams would be competing each other, so in total 5 rounds on both the days, correct?
Yeah.
Right? And both the days the team will be going against the same team?
No. The pair ups will be different. You'll be going on this on the side which was like different than the side that you were on before. And it's going to be very simple. But yeah, you'll be giving speeches on both days on opposite sides against different teams. And
Hmm.
yeah, I
Okay,
think
understood. And
Also,
so,
just to clarify, you are not going to do 5 rounds. We will be conducting 5 rounds, presuming that there are 10
right,
teams.
right.
But you will be doing 2 rounds. Yeah.
No, that I've understood. Thank you. So basically, both days they'll be performing, and they have to go in the same order. So, for example, if say Aryan is the first speaker on day one, he has to be the first speaker on the day two. Is my
your
understanding correct?
speaker order is fully dependent on you. Fully dependent on you. It doesn't.
Okay, so we can have a different speaking order as well, if at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
fair enough.
Also, one
Understood.
question that we're getting a lot in the chat is how do you know if you're junior or middle? Guys, in the form that you signed up in, you either selected junior or middle. Junior is for 6th and 7th graders, middle is for 8th and 9th graders. If you have even one member in your team who is either in 8th or 9th grade and the rest of the team is junior, then you automatically become a middle team. You're only a junior team if the whole team is in 6th or 7th grade. You're a middle team if the whole team or even one member of the team is in 8th and 9th grade. I hope that is understood.
Wait.
Miss Priyanka had mentioned to us that we are 4, 5, 6, 7 are doing in juniors, and the middle,
5, 6, 7, 8, and junior.
yeah, like 7, 8 was the middle, and
Oh, guys, my
5 and
bad.
6.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my bad. 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th. So same logic. I just said that wrong. Yeah.
Right. But we'll go by order of people who've raised hands. So,
Cool.
Aahvana, go ahead. Uh, if you have a question, please go ahead. Okay. I'm assuming they probably
Do
have
the
some.
teams
Yeah.
do the teams change on different dates? Like for example, if I'm with a group of people on day one, will I be with the same group of people on the day two?
Presumably in your team, yes. In terms of your opposition, no. You will have different people that you are going against. There might be a chance that you go against the same team, but again, your sides would be flipped. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Cool.
I have a question.
We'll go in order of raised hands by priority, like by the time that you've raised your hands. Juhi, go ahead.
So you said that you won't be revealing speaker orders. Does that mean that there won't be like the best speaker of the tournament or something, or will that be?
We will have it from our end, so you will still get all of your like best speaker stuff and things like that. However, the thing that changes is that you will not know your personal speaker scores, and the reason for this is just that we want a far safer environment for you
Yeah,
guys.
so guys,
No,
speaker awards are not just for the people who are going to be qualifying. Your speaker scores are fully dependent on the preliminary rounds. So the rounds that you're doing on 6th and 7th, make sure that you score really well on that because you might get top 10 speakers in your category dependent on your preliminary rounds. There will be also speaker awards for best speakers, etc. in like the finals and all, but the main top 10 speakers are dependent on these rounds. So yeah, okay, Noor.
For semifinals and finals, will we be getting proposition or opposition, or do we prepare both?
Okay, we
we
will
will
be
tell you.
revealing all of those details to those teams that make it. Don't worry, all of those details are going to be revealed later.
Yep, Amira, go ahead.
Are there any silent rounds among round 1 and round 2?
Uh,
No, I don't think there are silent rounds. You will be getting feedback for all rounds, right?
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Also, where will the finals be? The offline?
Um, it's going to be in Gurgaon. We'll be sharing the exact location very soon. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Surabhi, go ahead. Surabhi Mittal, you can go ahead. Sorry if I'm
Oh,
butchering your
yeah.
name.
So basically, I just wanted to confirm that the junior category would be fifth, sixth, seventh, and then the middle would be eighth and ninth, right?
Juniors is 5th and 6th, middle is 7th and 8th. Juniors with exceptions for 4th graders. Okay. There's a question in the chat which is, can you elucidate on the reply speeches? There were many questions on this, so we explained this. But basically, reply speeches is it's not supposed to be said by a completely different fourth speaker. Either your first speaker or your second speaker has to go again and give the reply speech, which is going to be a 2-minute speech where no POIs are allowed, and it's just going to be why you win this debate and basically just proving the judge why you win this debate, doing weighing, rebuttals, etc. We explained this already. We'll be sharing this PPT. Okay, I think we can move on to the middle motion. Any more questions on this junior motion, not on like logistics, but on junior motion? Okay, yeah, go on.
How many teams are there in junior?
Guys, I don't think that should be very important, but you will get to know once we release the draws, right? Okay, yeah, okay, you can move on. Yeah, Shree, you're doing motion release.
Yeah, this House regrets the continuance of NATO, which is the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, following the collapse of the Soviet Union. This is definitely a motion for which you need some amount of like research. So please make sure you do your research. Any questions on, oh, what does this term X mean? We can't answer beyond a point because this is completely up to your research. Largely, what we can say is that the Soviet Union, as most of you probably know, um, is an empire that fell, post which you had the creation of Russia. Russia used to be the biggest state in there, but obviously you had other states such as Ukraine within the Soviet Union, or otherwise known as the USSR. If there are any questions on perhaps certain terms or perhaps certain motion burdens, we can take them. If there are questions on what does NATO have to do with Soviet Union, we cannot answer them. Kaira, go ahead.
Could you like 1 second? Sorry.
Yep, no worries. Saina, you can go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I actually wanted to ask, can you please elucidate on the reply speeches? Like, I'm a little
I
confused.
believe I believe Aahvana has just done that. There are also some amazing resources on the web. Largely, your reply speech is just a crystallization speech where you try to prove why you win. Yeah. 1 second, just checking chat if there are any questions. If there are any questions on the middle motion, go ahead and ask. And then we can move on to equity briefings really quickly. Yep, Kaira, you can go ahead if you're in. You can also put it in chat in case you are not in a position to speak. Okay. While we wait for Kyra to probably just put this in chat, I'll wait for like 5, 10 more seconds. If there are no questions, we can go ahead with equity.
So, in this debate, we'd have to like prove we'd have we're just trying to prove which one like which side is better.
So
Like
essentially, the
specific.
unique thing about THR is that it is a retrospective round. The meaning of a retrospective round is just that from the past you change a certain event. That is to say, NATO would like if you are on Gov, NATO would be abolished or NATO would no longer exist ever since the collapse of the USSR. So the entirety of like history probably changes to some degree. So you need to go ahead and say that that alternate version of history is far, far better than the sort of history that we live in right now, if that makes sense. But largely, retrospective motion is just something that affects the past and not quite the present. So, for example, this house would ban alcohol, means that you ban alcohol right now. This house regrets the existence of alcohol, means that alcohol wouldn't exist at all. Yes, Ahana, go ahead.
If I'm right, then the junior motion will be for the fifth and sixth graders on the dates of 6 and 7, just your side changes, and then the middle motion will be for the semifinals and finals, right?
No,
Middle
guys.
motion
So
for
when you
6th and 7th grade?
guys, listen. Okay, when you signed up in the form, your parents or you, whoever signed up, you filled in either junior category or you filled in middle category. If even one member of your team is in the middle category, then your whole team is going to be in middle. There's going to be two rounds. I mean, there's going to be two rounds, right? On 6th and 7th. Junior and middle motion is going to be happening on those two dates. Okay? Both middle motion is not for semifinals. Middle motion is for the middle category for the for the 7th and 8th graders. That's who the middle motion is for. It's not semifinals.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
So,
Sorry, go on. Arya, if you have a question, go on.
will this be the same motion for both days?
Yes, for both days you will be debating on the same motion, just opposite sides. Saina, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry for asking again, but can you please elaborate on the motion, like a little breakdown would work?
Which motion and what specifically do you want
The middle.
elaborated? Okay, what exactly do you want elaborated?
On the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, please. Like,
So
how do
you
we
can do
do
a
it?
quick okay, so you can do a quick Google search of what NATO is. NATO is essentially like a military alliance of multiple European countries specifically. I think America is also part of it. Essentially, um, yeah, they were pretty important for the collapse of the USSR post the Cold War. Um, what else do you need elaborated on? Because this is definitely a motion for which you need to do some amount of baseline work before the arguments become very intuitive after you do that research. So we
But
cannot answer very yeah.
we can't use external resources for writing our
Of
thing, right?
course you can. Like you cannot use GPT, but you can use
Not GPT,
external.
but any other external resource can be used, right?
You can use the internet and you can use your parents and their knowledge obviously, but it should not write the entire speech. They should not write the entire speech for you, and your speech should not be copy pasted internet stuff.
Yeah, not the fact. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Ahana, go ahead.
Are we allowed to use notebooks, like, for example, notebooks
Yes,
about
you
like
can.
the history and stuff?
Yep, you can use notebooks about history. You can write physical notes, whatever you prefer. Any other questions, guys, on the middle motion?
And can it also be like you have prepared notes and you're making the speech up on the
Yeah,
spot,
like
or
I
do
said,
you
you
have
can,
to have
yeah, yeah.
speech ready?
Yeah, like I said, you can use physical notes and read off those physical notes. Obviously, there's a stylistic element involved, which is regardless of whether you read from the doc or whether you read from your actual book. Make sure you're making some amount of eye contact, things like that. Yep. Next slide, please. We'll finish equity briefings in just so obviously you guys already know this. You should prepare both sides, and then for any further out rounds are just rounds beyond preliminaries. You will get the information. Please do not badger us at DOI. We are currently like we will make sure all of the information reaches the people that it needs to like reach in the first place. Do not worry. Yeah, next slide. Right. So obviously, I think we've talked about this enough. Any usage of AI, GPT, etc., is strictly not condoned. That is, if we suspect that you are using AI, and our judges will obviously not just accuse you for the sake of accusing you, they will probably record some parts of your speech, and things like that. These are judges who are highly trained because this time we had a form that was circulated among multiple like highly accomplished judges within the high school circuit. They have like the capacity to be able to identify AI. In the case that we find that like lots of your speech is AI generated, we will have to take action as the equity team. We obviously do not want to do this, so we would highly encourage you like engage in debating, which is a critical thinking activity, and write your own speeches. Obviously this means that we will still be going through a rigorous process to decide whether it is AI or not. We're not just going to eliminate you because we think you're very rhetorical. You do not need to worry about the back end of this. All you need to note is that the usage of AI is strictly prohibited. The second thing is obviously getting external help from coaches, parents, and other sorts of like sources who are not within your team. We do obviously allow this considering this is a prepped motion. However, if you are going beyond the line, i.e., you are having your entire speech written by a coach, entire speech written by an adult, we would again highly encourage you to write it by yourself because again, you are the people who are paying, you are the people who are actively part of that round, you know the round best. But in the case that we suspect that, okay, you are stuttering on certain words and you're just not able to go ahead and do things like that, then we will have to like go ahead and start a formal inquiry. We don't want to do that. You don't want that. Please make sure you respect the boundary. Obviously, you can ask your mom what is the streaming service, what are your thoughts on this motion, but please make sure your mom is not writing the entire speech, and that applies for any other trusted adult or otherwise.
Okay, yeah. Guys, not to scare you, just like if we put what she said into very basic terms, what she said is correct. But basically, we've all been debating for a very long time. We all used AI. We all know what AI is like. No matter how much you try to hide it, we know exactly how AI sounds, right? We're not saying this because if you use AI, it's good like you're going to be like sent to jail or something. Nothing like that's going to happen. It's just for the sake of your speaker scores, for the sake of how well your debate is going to go. Please know that you are going to write a debate way better than AI ever can. And it's very noticeable when someone writes AI. AI writes the same thing for everyone. So it's very noticeable. Your debate's going to be way better if you write it yourself. Just trust us. And it also is going to be very noticeable if, for example, in a POI, you aren't able to answer it because obviously you didn't write your speech yourself. So, for the sake of just these things, for the sake of your round to go well, for you to get good speaker points, we will obviously reward people who we think um, have written the speech themselves and are fully understand the debate. Okay.
Yes. Amira, so it's a question. You can go ahead. Varnika, next slide, please. Okay, cool. We're going to quickly go over the equity briefings, which is just our general round, like round rules. Obviously, we like this is a school's competition, and this is also an organization primarily made by like students themselves. So we do not want to condone anything related to things like discrimination, harassment, bullying, vilification of other people, etc. We debating is a very safe space and a very inclusive space for people from different backgrounds, different circumstances, etc. And we want to like make sure that none of you guys feel unsafe within this environment. We want DOI to be a very safe space for you guys. Presumably, that means all of us have to agree to this, like, we need to agree to implicit rules to make sure that it is an enjoyable experience for all of us. And yeah, we'll just talk about those rules in the next slide. But before that, just want to quickly address the question within chat. Yes, you can use AI for research, but I just want you to note that AI is often a bit outdated in a lot of circumstances. It's citing, like, now I hear that AI can cite stuff, but there are still hallucinations within that. So we would still highly encourage you using like um human thought and human research. Yes, Ahana, go ahead.
If you are unable to answer a POI, and like the POI is not under the scope of our speech, like it's totally different, then what should we do?
You just
can
be like that
simply
POI is not related.
No.
Like,
yeah, guys, also you don't have to like if, if you're confident while asking your POI, that's all that matters. Like if you've already answered it, obviously it's preferred that you answered it. But if you're running out of time, you can even say stuff like, "I've just talked about this. I'm not explaining this again." You can say stuff like, "I'm going to be talking about this. Just wait. I just started my speech." You can say stuff like that. Okay.
right, cool. We'll move back to quickly on equity policy, and then you guys can ask as many questions as you want. Obviously, avoid generalizations. So for example, if you have a motion on a specific group, then make sure that you don't say that the entire group engages in X activity. That is an equity violation, and that is incredibly demeaning to people within that group. The best way to think of, like, especially when you are debating, for example, minorities and other sorts of protected communities, the best way to think about your speech is that would they be comfortable if they were in the same room as you giving that speech? If you think the answer to that is no, then your speech is an equity violation in the vast majority of instances. The second is obviously do not cause detriment to a person, because that person has actively taken the initiative to come out and talk about something. In a lot of cases, we will be making sure that the equity process is somewhat anonymous, like the entire tournament does not know about like a certain issue that you have lodged on. But in the case that you also come to know, please make sure that you do not actively hurt the victims of that particular equity complaint. That is incredibly demeaning to them and like just really sad. The third thing is obviously do not try and